Welcome everyone to Survivors Corner Speaking Out for Justice event. My name is Donna Pollard and I am the Community Enrichment Officer and founder of Survivors Corner. We are excited to be present with you today, albeit virtually, to ensure the health and safety of our community during this pandemic. There are a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to go over with you before we begin our program. As you can see, some of our speakers are here in person at our office, while the rest of the attendees are joining us virtually. This is because we wanted to keep in-person attendance at a minimum until it is safe to gather in crowds once again. Everyone except for speakers has been muted, but we do want to hear your comments and questions about today's discussion. Please use the chat feature in the Zoom meeting to communicate with us, and our moderator will collect questions to be addressed during the panel discussion at the end of today's event. You may hear something today that triggers a strong emotion or memory. If you need a peer to chat with, please privately message our moderator using the chat feature for information on how to connect with us outside of today's meeting. As many of you know, we have just completed our most recent Speak Out Support Workshop series with courageous survivors who have lent their hearts to the sacred healing space and their firsthand expertise to discussions about policy, legislative, and most importantly, systemic reform needs. You will hear about some of these shortly, but first, I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to the reason Survivors Corner was established, with our first workshop being held in January 2017. It was around that time, through my own healing journey, that I identified the vast need to transform our community, our state, our nation. Required two approaches: healing trauma within families by building resilience, and changing laws that unintentionally perpetuate cycles of lifelong harms, such as in the case of child marriage. In order for these approaches to result in breaking abusive cycles and ensuring adequate resource distribution to empower families to thrive, we needed to create a movement, one that would empower survivors to reframe their trauma into purpose, by supporting healing and training them for advocacy opportunities. The depth of character that it takes to survive the unimaginable and go on to live a life enriched with meaning is a depth of character that navigates us to the next level of our humanity. This level is one of peace, prosperity, and equity for all, free from violence and oppression. Survivor voices are critical as the driving force to propel us to a better and more humane way of living, as their direct experiences showcase the elements of reform our communities and legislative bodies need desperately to act upon. That's why we've launched an initiative in partnership with national organizations to end child marriage through parental consent, starting here in Kentucky in 2018. It did not take long for other states to begin following suit and adopt protective legislative reforms very similar to what we have achieved here. This year, Survivors Corner is focusing our efforts on reforming child marriage laws in North Carolina, Maryland, and Illinois, and the statute of limitations in Indiana, all while connecting with and supporting survivors who are truly the driving force behind community advancement. Some of these courageous survivors are here with me today, and it is with great honor that I now introduce you to our first speaker, Morgan Riley.
Thank you. This is called I Want to Be Her Again. Before I met him over 7 years ago, my level of confidence meant that when I fell down, I got up stronger. When I failed, I learned from it. And most importantly, I would never allow anyone to lay hand on me, cheat on me, or violate me without consequence. You see, the woman I was over 7 years ago was sure she knew right from wrong. The woman I was over 7 years ago thought that she would have walked away from him the first red flag she saw. I want to be her. Before I met him over 7 years ago, the trauma I felt most exposed to was racial trauma. I was adopted when I was 3 weeks old to an all-white family, had 2 mamas as parents, and lived in a predominantly white community in Indiana. As a biracial woman, the impact of racism was felt from so many angles in my life: school, college, friends, family, and society. It was not easy and is still not easy. But I stood firm in my Black voice, a voice that needs to be heard and needs to be loud. I was not going to quiet down to make others comfortable. I had to speak up. I had to make change. I did not let the cop who pulled me over get away with profiling me in a traffic stop. I pled not guilty and went to court. I did not let some of my white family members get away with discrimination towards me, telling me to just deal with racism, or that I should know better because I was raised by white people and challenging racism in my family. I spoke up. I was proud of my voice. I want to be her again. When I met him over 7 years ago, I was just getting my professional life started. I was getting a degree and looking forward to working to empower women across the world. I believed in myself and my ability to make change. If you would have asked me then, I was unstoppable. I had the world ahead of me and I could not wait to build and sustain a safer community. I began a career in victim advocacy and worked alongside survivors and served survivors of sexual and interpersonal violence. I went through several trainings and presentations, all teaching me what dynamics of sexual violence was and what unhealthy relationships looked like. I was given the tools I needed to advocate for others and to get justice they deserved. Yet I was noticing that I was losing the voice, my voice, to stand up for myself. Where was the voice in stopping and preventing what was going to happen to me? Where did she go? I want to be her again. When I met him over 7 years ago, I began internalizing so much of what was being told to me. You know I can kill you anytime I want. I will keep driving this car and kill you. You were driving my car. Why did I need to die? Why can I not tell you to stop saying that to me? I stayed silent. You told me I was fat and degraded aspects of my body you didn't like. I started to believe you were right. I was fat. I was ugly. I should be thankful that you even want to be with me the way that I look. I cannot even hear the voice of the woman that I once knew. I want to find her. I need her. I want to be her again. When I met him over 7 years ago, I had never experienced sexual violence before. And now that I'm in a relationship with him, can I tell him to stop? You tell me that you thought it was what I wanted. I told you through tears and fears what made you believe I wanted it. Why did I continue staying in a relationship with you for at least another year? Where did she, the woman I knew before I met you, go? I want to be her again. When I met him over 7 years ago, he told me that even if I broke up with him, he could still rape me anytime he wanted. Still rape me? So you acknowledge the time you held me down on the bed in a hotel room that I paid for and I begged you to stop. Tears filled in my eyes. And you told me you thought I wanted it and you were sexually violating me? Or when you choked me so hard that I lost the ability to speak, breathe, and begged you to stop that you were sexually violating me? I was scared and knew that this was not right. Why did I not walk away? Why did my mother sitting down in tears and fear for my life not enough to make me want to stay away from him? Where did she, the woman I once knew, go that could protect me? Speak up, Morgan. I want to be her again. When I left him 7 years ago, I felt lost. I ultimately ended our relationship because he was cheating, not because of the abuse that I experienced. I drew the line at cheating? Wow, Morgan. My mental health plummeted. I was so angry because I missed him, the person who taught me that love can sometimes hurt. Despite everything I knew about sexual and interpersonal violence, I blamed myself. I was not a survivor, I was just weak. I did not deserve the air the earth offered us. I wanted my life to be over. I was not her, the woman I once knew anymore. I did not even recognize her anymore. I did not have the strength to fight. I want to be her again. Please let me be her again. After I left him 7 years ago, I felt trapped. Who could I talk to? Who would believe me? The picture he began to create was that I was crazy. That is a smart picture to paint because if I ever came forward about what he did to me, you already discredited me, right? Was I crazy? I've been working with survivors of sexual and interpersonal violence for years and knew that justice is rarely attainable for so many. I told some friends and some family, but I kept very quiet. What was there for me to say? I did not speak up, so can I call myself a victim? The woman I knew before I met him would have shouted from the rooftops, demanding accountability towards the hurt he caused me. I really want to be her again. After I left him, I did not come forward with my story until 7 years later. I came forward after someone else he hurt came forward. He hurt other people after me. I was not enough for you to stop hurting other women. My justice turned for justice, not for myself, but for others. I blame myself for not stopping him when I had the chance. The woman I knew before would have stopped him. I want to be her again. After I came forward the first time 7 years later, I was offered forms of justice from some of our community leaders that not only caused harm. I am not here to drag people's names through the dirt, but I learned very quickly that the Black woman coming forward about a Black man was not what my community wanted, including my own Black community. I was never offered justice. He was only offered protection. I got quiet again. Why was I not getting loud? Stand up for yourself, Morgan. You would have before you met him. I want to be her again. After I came forward for the second time 7 years later, this year, amidst the protests to address systemic oppression and to get justice for the murder of Breonna Taylor, I was met with more pushback from my community. I came forward because I did not feel safe in movement space, and I did not feel other women were safe in movement space. I was told that I was a liar, a bitch, and only doing it for the money, and also that I was a distraction. A femme leader in the movement even said that they did not believe my story because, look at her, insinuating that no one would sexually assault me based on my looks. I lost community, I lost friends, I lost professional relationships, and I lost community with fellow survivors I had worked alongside for years, whose stories I believed, listened to, and took action if requested. I was told that my story was not valid because I did not speak up and I did not make a police report and follow the criminal justice process. A Black woman was being told that her story was untrue because she did not call the police. Interesting, coming from those fighting against police brutality on the front lines today in our city. I was told to be quiet and to know my place. But this time it was different. This time the girl that I wanted to be was here again. And this time I was not going to let a community that I've worked so hard in protecting and fighting for knock her off her feet. Or they could try, but just like the girl I was before, she was going to get up stronger. I was not going to be quiet for others' comfort. In June of this year, I got married and not a single person from one side of my white family attended. Why? Because I wanted to know why they were not standing by me as I fought for the right for myself and other Black people in this country to live. That's okay, I don't need you. I found her again, and I found my family. This time, the girl I wanted to be was here again, and she is not going to be let perceived power in our community destroy the lives of survivors of sexual and interpersonal violence and silence our voices. I'm not going to stop showing up in movement spaces and fighting for justice of BIPOC folks so that someone who causes harm and refuses to be held accountable can. And I will work every day to ensure that survivors in my community have access to alternative forms of justice that do not always include engaging the state, such as transformative justice, as those processes will be safe and center the needs of survivors on their pathway to safety and healing. This time, the girl I wanted to be again was here. I'm not only here to get up and speak out, but to demand no person in this community goes up without a pathway to speak up, without a pathway to hold others accountable, and I will stand here and speak the words to other survivors that others did not have the strength to say to me. I believe you. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan, for your powerful message and for the courage to be here and present today. And it is truly an honor to be able to walk on this journey with you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Heather Sams. So I wanted to read a creative writing piece that I'd written. I was angry at the time, and so I wrote this piece.
This is the introduction to the piece that I've written in the summer of 2018. It was this summer that I'd hit my wall, not that I hadn't previously been rammed into this proverbial wall enough before. It's just that this time I was the one gunning for said wall with the intent to demolish it, and I didn't give a damn if I knocked myself unconscious in the process either. That wall was marked as my set target and would no longer be in existence once I was done with it. I'd lost my first home health nursing job immediately after I had applied for FMLA. My employer was completely aware of the crisis I was dealing with because I'd explained our circumstances. I'd requested FMLA because my daughter has sustained life-threatening injuries caused by the sadistic sexual violence she just endured. And so just in case she were to be hospitalized again, and she was, and potentially needed me to resume medical homeschooling her again, and she did, I wanted to be absolutely certain that my job would still be there. But no one gave a damn, and so less than 2 months after filing, I was receiving my first unemployment check. Luckily, I'd only collected 2 of those checks before reporting to my next full-time job, of which I'd started while my daughter was still in the ICU. I purposely told no one that she was there or anything about our circumstances out of fear of losing that job too. I also had no alternative but to go to work because I was out of money and I refused for us to be homeless again, simply because we had the audacity to actually survive. In the end, though, it didn't matter how quiet I'd been or how many commendations I'd received from patients, physicians, and facilities, because when my employer realized that my pre-approved vacation had actually been granted as a gift to my daughter through the Sunshine Wish Foundation, she'd consulted with my former employer and learned that I was a potential financial liability. And so she fired me too. As luck would have it, my first employer actually attempted to sit in on the reported appeals hearing that my second company had filed with the state in their opposition to my receiving unemployment benefits. That manager revealed that she'd been sitting right alongside my latter employer for the hearing until the state officiant had her officially ejected. Although I'm grateful to the state for debunking the lies that my employer had created about my work performance, and that they'd agreed I'd been terminated without any just cause, the state actually wrote into the record that I'd been working to the best of my ability when I was fired. But it didn't prevent me from suffering substantial financial loss, which seemed to give society easier access to demoralize any shred of dignity we had left. This animalistic behavior left me the impression that the masses had been lying in wait, eager to emotionally finish us off and officially complete the job that our perpetrator had merely started. The fact that the man who had inflicted such hell upon us was being treated completely different, both judiciously and socially, did not go unnoticed by me. This is a man who'd been involved with NAMBLA members, North American Man-Boy Love Association, and who'd frequently visited a local underground sex dungeon that had been investigated and reported on by the Daily Mail, including pictures they published revealing wooden beds having leather straps to the sides for restraining and chainsaws fixed to the ends of the beds inside the dungeon. This man, who'd also admitted to his crimes on taped police recordings and could be heard saying things like, "How could there be any DNA still left with him? Bitch done washed that thing out by now." That bitch he was referring to was my minor child, and that thing he was talking about was her vagina. And yet, even though he was also substantiated by CPS as being a violent child molester and described by a family court judge as being someone who was likely to commit these crimes again, the prosecutor had chosen not to pursue criminal charges, stating that there was a lack of physical evidence. What followed for me and my kids was pure and utter hell. What followed for him was totally opposite. It was the 3rd year in a row that I waited to receive any of the crime victims' compensation funding that me and my daughter had been awarded in 2015. In July of 2019, I finally received partial payment along with a full typed report, admitting that our claim had erroneously been placed in abeyance due to the carelessness of a board member, who's now since been removed from the board. The attorney representing that office had fought tooth and nail to keep us from receiving, stating to one of the office investigators that I should be lucky to get anything considering that our perpetrator had never been charged or convicted, and then further questioned how in the hell it was that I was so broke anyways. In the meantime, my two teenage children and I continued to bathe by boiling water on my stove, which only worked as long as the electricity remained connected, which quite often it wasn't. I'd sold my bed and my bed frame, and many times found myself sleeping on a cold hard floor after I'd also had to sell my couch, love seat, and chairs. I recall driving over to a pawn shop late one Sunday evening and selling 3 flat screen TVs just so that I could afford to buy my son a school lunch the next day and have enough gas money to transport him to a special needs school located 30 miles away from my home. That night in the pawn shop, it had been obvious while I stood in that line that I was one of the few who wasn't looking to sell my things so that I could afford to buy my next fix. But rather, I'd been there nothing more than just a mom, desperately begging to provide basic necessities for my kids. I continued to sell things like my shoes, coats, cookware, or anything that I still owned, while also independently working as a caregiver who cleaned houses for the extra money. And yet still I was told by organizations like St. Vincent de Paul that in order for me to receive assistance, they need to first inspect the inside of my home. As if once inside, they'd find criminal paraphernalia like the leather gloves, rope, and knife found inside of our perpetrator's vehicle during the investigation. Even though it's against the law to place a victim in collections over unpaid debt she submitted to the Crime Victims Compensation Board to review for repayment, it didn't matter because no one would actually enforce that violation of the law. So when I informed the Crime Victims Compensation Board that I was being dropped as a patient by my physician of 20 years due to non-payment, again, no one gave a shit. Ironically, my physician did keep our violent offender on as a patient because he could pay his bill. He'd been receiving unemployment benefits after losing his job as a paralegal at a local law firm who discovered why he'd been missing work, had been at the courthouse, and later jailed for violating the protective order we had in place. I guess he was collecting benefits so that he could sit around and think about who was going to do this to him. My son's former orthodontist didn't care about violating that law either. In fact, behaving immorally seemed second nature since she'd aggressively hurt my son during cleanings and crushed his fragile ego by telling him that his smile would never look right again since we carelessly neglected to make our routine visits. Apparently being hospitalized was careless on my part. I wrote this piece after the new family court judge overseeing the child support case between me and my kid's father, my first husband, had granted him a child support reduction. Despite the fact that he's a 4-time convicted domestic violence offender who had lost his parental rights to his own children just 4 years prior, I can only assume that the judge felt he was deserving of yet another break too. I wrote this after I had to watch my daughter's all-girl Catholic high school hand down award after award to other young ladies graduating for achievements in things like cheerleading for the all-boys Catholic high school for all 4 years. Rather than these educators put their community leadership into action by honoring a young lady like my daughter for her outstanding achievements in things like surviving life after death and still taking the stand to testify against her perpetrator. I wrote this after the local township trustees board looked me and my daughter in the eye and told us that we just needed to move on from this already. I wrote this after losing my home and being forced by court order to drive my vehicle back to a man that I had and still do have a standing protective order against at 10 p.m. alone, in the dark, and without a car to drive away afterwards. I wrote this after the federal government seized my $5,000 tax refund because I'd been unable to make the student loan payments after surviving. I wrote this after being forced to explain to the state nursing board why they should reinstate my nursing license, when the only reason it had lapsed to begin with was because I'd been too poor to pay the fees to keep it current after surviving. I'd written this after learning that my own child's sexual abuse relative somehow disappeared from the county courthouse, and for a dozen more reasons too. But on behalf of me and my rage, this piece is for everybody else out there just like me, because we've earned the right to stick both middle fingers up in the air and shout as loud as we want to at you. And this is that piece. I did not manifest this in my mind. This apathetic and carnivorous society, this pathetic form of human existence that resembles some mutated cross-strain of super-viral infection gone wild. For centuries, life has denied acknowledging its female energy, but now it's much more than the denial of or the embracing of its sacred feminine, which is so needed to balance out all of the all-encompassing masculine. We now live in a time where we don't just rape and beat our daughters, sisters, and mothers, we do much worse, and yet we still believe that we've come so far. Previously, we sold them off with dad's best donkey as dowry, prepping them for producing and forcing them to shed the name they never had, branding them like cattle with the last name of their newest owner, aka husband, or those were the good old days. Now we don't even wait for them to be sold off so that they can serve their master of the house and produce children. Why should puberty get in the way? Now we sell our girls out to be raped while they're still infants. We sell kindergartners to men who have machetes and AK-47s and torture our little girls. But oh, how far we've come. Yet ironically, the process of evolution has gone in reverse. Who's asleep at the wheel here, and how do we get humans to wake up? How do folks drive by an abortion clinic every day knowing that religious extremists help pregnant rape victims with eggs and think that their shit don't stink as bad as, those foreigners who publicly stoned their women? You think an egg coming at me with a wind up fast pitch feels good? Who are these people who turn the volume up to Katy Perry while driving by, never once thinking about that pregnant rape victim who's about to walk into that clinic only to be further violated, shamed, and tortured? Maybe they're the same people who believe that it's always worse over there, refusing to understand that having a very large vaginal transducer inserted into an already raw, raped, and mutilated vagina might just feel the same as female genital mutilation. And why is she being forced to have this done? Because the law said she's probably lying and wasn't really raped anyways. Male politicians said she's just a killer who needs to think about how cruel she is if she aborts that baby. And male politicians know better, and of course they never lie, like all the rape victims do. At the same time that folks are placing their order for a quarter pounder with cheese at McDonald's, she's gotten home from the clinic and has begun hemorrhaging in her own bed. While she lays there soaked in the blood of both she and her baby, her drug-addicted, alcoholic, double-fisted type of wife-beating rapist of a husband is nice enough to turn the 6 o'clock news on for her, just in time to watch undercover footage of mutilated fetal parts that some politician's congressional aide captured at the Planned Parenthood only to prove how disgusting she really is. Luckily, her at-home surgery is causing her to lose consciousness, and grieving the loss of her baby can find a hand for today. At the same time she lies there dying, another child-molesting Roy Moore took office. Another Microsoft exec paid a pimp to send him a teenage girl who he calls hooker, but I know better as victim. Another Harvey Weinstein raped another actress, and another Larry Nassar stomps out some female athlete's spirit. All the while, folks sit inside their comfy home and complain that the news is just too depressing to watch. And so they switch over to the Kardashians because they had a hard day. Jamming Katy Perry and eating McDonald's, and because it's just easier to laugh at memes promoting rape culture that other half-dead people post on Facebook rather than to think of that 10-month-old baby girl being sodomized in Kentucky, or the California judge who let an 84-year-old man walk free after admitting to raping a 5-year-old girl, or the majority of politicians who participate in child drugging and raping parties, or the judges and court officiants who satisfy their true animal by participating in human sex trafficking, or the number of pedophiles who are mostly male that get judges to grant them the right to legally molest children day in, day out, who are mostly our little girls or child brides. So, all right, so I'll complete it there, and that's the end.
Heather, I really appreciate you sharing the authenticity of your story and the raw emotion that goes with it, and also pointing out various points of systemic failure that re-traumatize victims. We will now hear from Kathleen Stats.
afternoon. My name is Kathleen. This is my journey. I have spent most of my life running from the pain. The pain started when my grandfather molested me for the very first time. I was almost 5 and exceedingly small and petite, and he was a sexual sadist who was larger than life. That night, he introduced me to pain, and he continued to hold me to the life of pain I lived for years. There was the physical pain, the beatings, the rapes, tying me down and branding and torturing me with objects, anything to inflict pain on my small body. He thought it was funny at times, and at times it was my punishment. Through the years, I learned to run from the pain by being so still and holding my breath and staring so fixated on one thing that I couldn't feel the physical pain anymore. I learned to run from the pain when I could go a bit further with my numbing skills, and in my mind, I could float above my body and watch what was happening, or fly outside the barn and stay safe. I ran from the physical pain by developing other personalities who could handle that, what my weak self could not. They would help me take the abuse. They would help clean me up afterwards and help me live my everyday life. When I was 9, I did literally run away from my grandfather one night, knowing the pain I was going to endure later. It was bad, and the pain became worse. I used my developing coping skills to run from the physical and emotional pain of being sold to other men and the pain that comes with being gang raped. The pain of humiliation and the pain of knowing I was their plaything and not one of them was going to save me. Instead, I was their toy to use for their pleasure, then toss aside without any regard for my life, my heart, and my pain. I ran from the pain of knowledge, knowing I had told my parents more than once and they did nothing to protect me. Knowing that one of the men who bought and used me for his pleasure was a sheriff's deputy. I ran from the emotional pain of knowing there was not anyone who was going to rescue me. The pain. It was too much when I was induced as an 11-year-old and had a baby in the basement of my great aunt's house. The pain grew more the next day when we went to some field and buried it. When he died and my physical pain ended, I thought it was over. I thought I was successful in escaping the pain, but I was not successful at all because there was a lot more to come. There was the psychological pain of being sexualized at a tender childhood age and the constant confusion that I tried to navigate in my teen years. The pain of burdens that I was too weak to bear from the result of horrible decisions I made and the pain of shame, loneliness, and mistrust. The pain of over 6 torturous years of my grandfather telling me I loved what he did to me because if I didn't love it, I would have made him stop. He never stopped. There was the pain of daily life, the pain of trying to survive all I went through, all while at the same time going to school, going to church, going outside to play, doing chores, doing homework, trying to make friends, trying to keep friends, trying to act like the normal kids did while knowing there was something not quite normal about myself. There was the pain of wanting and trying to end it all. The pain continued into my adult years as I married a man who was an abuser. The pain continued when he raped me and, in his words, treated me like secondhand trash. The pain just continued on, and I kept running from it. I ran from it while there were years of depressions and hospitalizations in mental hospitals. And the pain continued as there were suicide attempts and every kind of self-sabotage behavior I could come up with. The pain comes from self-harming and the shame that comes with it. I ran from the pain until I couldn't run anymore. With 3 young children whom I loved more than anything, and an abusive husband I knew wouldn't take care of them if I died by suicide, I needed to run to a place I had never run to before. I ran to get help. I ran towards help, and then I stopped running. It was and still is the hardest work I have ever done, but it is the best work that I've ever done. For the last 14 years, I have been slowly walking the road of healing. It has been a long, long road, and I have taken my time. I have had so many detours and stops along the way and have fallen in many pits, of course, after I dug them myself. I have sat at the bottom of those pits and played in the mud. Then I would crawl back out and start slowly down the healing road again. I have not given in, nor have I given up. I have become stronger. I found the strength to divorce my abusive husband and took my kids and did my best to establish a safe space for them to live, be loved, and grow. I became more and more stronger. I made a safe space for myself and continued to be stronger. One day, I came across an ad on Facebook for a workshop for survivors at a place called Survivors Corner. I signed up, I went, and became stronger. I kept coming to the workshops, and I have kept getting stronger. Then I started running again. This time, I ran towards the pain, and I'm still running. This time, I run towards the pain of others who have suffered trauma in this life and need someone who will be by their side, helping them along the way. I now lead workshops for Survivors Corner, and I'm now serving as the president of the board and program coordinator to help develop more programs for survivors on their own healing journey to find support and empowerment. I run towards the pain of countless children who are being bought by predators over the internet for sex. I am working with 2 other individuals to pass a bill that we started last year. Senator Alice Kerr filed Senate Bill 161 last year, and it made it through the Senate and went into the House. It stopped there because of the shutdown of the government due to the pandemic. This bill strengthens the penalties for those who procure children, specifically those under the age of 12 who have longer prison sentences, and to serve 85% of that time. It brings our law closer to surrounding states and the federal government. We are working again to file this bill soon. If you would like more information, contact us at the email that's provided to you, and I will keep you updated on this progress. I keep running. I run towards the pain of those re-traumatized by those who are not educated in working with people of trauma. I run towards the pain as I serve on the Attorney General Survivor Council as we prepare to train those in the justice system how to help victims seek justice for the crimes against them and trauma without re-traumatizing them further. I speak to those who are willing to listen, and I train and educate those who are willing to learn. I continue to work on my own healing so I can keep on running towards those that are in pain to share with them the love and compassion and hope they need. What can you do? Get involved, volunteer, donate. You will hear today several pieces of legislation that need to be changed. Get involved. Go vote for Marcy's law that is going to be on the ballot this year. Call your representatives in support of these bills you hear about today. Donate funds to help support the work it takes to bring about these legislative changes. It is not easy to change laws. It takes a lot of work and time and effort. A lot of time. It takes years to change a law. That is a lot of trips to Frankfurt, a lot of calls and meetings, and a lot of time to get the word out to individuals and to groups to get support for your bill. There are lawyers and people who look over the bill to make sure the wording is correct. And again, this takes time and money, but it is so worth it. Help to strengthen the nonprofits in our community. help strengthen Survivor's Corner so we can continue being a part of someone's healing journey from the pain they have endured. Get educated on the issues that have been spoken about today and learn how to run towards the pain of others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, for your bravery and your continued dedication. It is such an honor to be able to continue working with you. Our next speaker is Dr. Emily Boinstall. Dr. Boinstall is the Director of Outreach for Marcy's Law Kentucky, an initiative that Survivor's Corner is very happy to support and endorse. Dr. Boinstall.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me okay? Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you to Survivor's Corner for the incredible work that you do. Thank you to the three speakers who have shared their journeys and their stories of resilience and courage and bravery with us today. And thank you to Donna for your friendship and for being such a light in this world. We are all lucky. We are all lucky to be here and to be connected today because of you and the space that you've created. So thank you for letting me join you today in this space. I am the Director of Outreach for Marcy's Law for Kentucky. And one of the things that Donna said in her opening remarks is that Survivor's Corner was started as a way to reframe trauma into purpose. And that is absolutely at the heart of Marcy's Law as well. Marcy's Law was created by the family of Marcy Nicholas, who was murdered, and their experiences with the CJ system is what inspired them to turn their pain into purpose. It is also my story and my journey to this moment as well. So in 2005, my cousin was a sophomore at the University of Delaware when she was raped and murdered, and I had to figure out how I was going to turn my pain into purpose. I decided to pursue a career in an academic way. So I decided to go to graduate school and I got a PhD in criminology and sociology. My specific area of focus is in victimology. So instead of looking at the folks who commit crimes and instead of looking at the systems in a traditional way, I look at the people who have been affected by crime. I look at the ways that it has affected all aspects of their lives, the communities in which they live, their families, so on and so forth. So I come to this role with my own story and my own journey as well. And I'm really glad to be here with all of you today. So in my work in the classroom and in my research and my teaching, I would teach a lot about the things that we've talked about today, right? We talk a lot about victims' overall satisfaction with the criminal justice system, what influences that, what makes a difference in that, how is it that can play a role in somebody's healing and somebody's, the aftermath of experiencing crime. And as we heard earlier, the justice system is not the only way to seek healing, right? But for those who decide that that is an important part of their healing process, what the research shows is that when survivors, when victims are treated with dignity and respect in that system, when their voices are heard, when they are given the space to be able to know what's going on, to know, to be notified of proceedings, to be able to be heard about their thoughts on the potential of a plea bargain, to be able to be heard by providing a victim impact statement. We know that there is a strong correlation between victims who are informed of their rights and their satisfaction with the justice system, regardless of the outcome of a decision, right? So when there is legal protection and it's strong, victims are more likely to be aware of their rights, they're more likely to participate in the criminal justice system, they're more likely to view criminal justice system officials favorably and to express more overall satisfaction with the system. So strong legal protection produces greater victim involvement and better experiences with the justice system altogether. We know that that is an important piece in healing. We know that the criminal justice system is one that can have kindness in it, that can have healing and community, and one that can make space for victims in the effort to pursue justice. We know that that can happen. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen consistently across the board for all victims. Here in Kentucky, we are one of only 15 states that does not have constitutional rights for victims of crime. So this means that our rights are not protected at the same level as defendants' rights, and it means that there's no enforceability. And rights, without enforceability, there really is no right, as we heard explained earlier today, so powerfully. The systemic failures that can happen send important messages to people that some people don't matter and some people do. That when rights are upheld and enforced for some people, but not for everybody and not consistently across the board, it sends messages of who deserves justice and who doesn't, of who matters and who doesn't. And that's not something that I'm willing to stand for. And I hope it's not something that you're willing to stand for either. And so we need stronger protections of crime victims' rights. And that's what Marsy's Law would do. Marsy's Law would elevate crime victims' rights to the constitutional level. It would ensure that they would be enforceable and that they would be implemented consistently for all victims. And so that's why I do what I do, right? That's why I'm here. That's my journey and how I've been able to use my story to turn pain into purpose, and to stand up for and with survivors of crime. So I know this from an academic perspective. This is what I do for a living, right? I teach this, I see this. But I want to share with you, just in the few minutes that I have, I want to share with you some very, very powerful words that courageous survivors across the state have shared with me. So first, I'll share with you from Alana. She said that I wanted to put the pieces of my life back together. And in order to do so, I needed to be part of a system and feel heard and respected. But I found that the trauma continued as I entered the judicial system. Marsy's Law would have ensured that I had a constitutional right to be heard, to be present, to receive restitution, to have my safety considered in determining whether to release the defendant and setting conditions of release. That's why I'm asking everyone for their support, and I'm asking you to vote yes for Marsy's Law. Alana's story is one of many that I have heard of survivors who have pursued justice in our traditional justice system, only to find that it has added to the harm that they've experienced. And so it's on her behalf that I do this work, and that I ask you to vote yes for Marsy's Law. I want to share with you a few other quotes that I think are really powerful. Julie said that based on her experience, she feels as though her family does not even matter. Mary said, "Tell me, how is this even justice for our family?" Phoebe said, "Sometimes I feel as if no one cares for the families at all." Amy says, "I want my voice to be heard so nobody has to go through what we went through." Beverly says, "I have never been so in the dark in my life. It's like hell." And Sherry says, "I feel like I've just been forgotten as a survivor." I don't forget Sherry. And I don't forget any of the other survivors who have decided that this is the way that they want to seek justice, only to find that their voices have been silenced again, and that they have lost a sense of control and a sense of healing in this pursuit of justice. And so that is why I feel so passionately about Marsy's Law. That's why I think it's such an important piece of the work that you are doing here with Survivors Corner. And as we heard earlier, this is one way, one simple way. There are lots of ways that we can get involved. There are lots of ways that we can support survivors, lots of different ways. And this is one of them. And we have the opportunity this November, when it is back on the ballot, to check that box that says, yes, you're voting for Amendment 1. Marsy's Law will be Amendment 1. And we will have on our website, we'll have a sample ballot. You'll be able to see all of the information that you need in order to be able to be prepared to vote yes on Amendment 1. But that is an easy way that we can do this, right? And it's here, and our chance is now to be able to do so. So if you are feeling inspired to make a difference, if you are feeling inspired to do something, to support survivors in our state, I would love to get you involved. Spread the word about Marcy's Law. Let your friends and family know why you support it, why we need it, why it matters. We're asking people to send 10 text messages a week to let people know that this is going to be on the ballot and to answer questions. You can always direct people right to me if they have specific questions, and I'm happy to provide any kind of education or information that they need. But this is our chance to stand up on Election Day and say, we support survivors of crime. They deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. They deserve to have their rights protected in a way that is truly, truly meaningful and will ensure their meaningful participation in the justice system. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have at the end. And certainly, I'm sure Donna will be able to pass along my contact information as well. So thank you again for having me here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boydenstall, for informing us of the critical effort to ensure that victims have constitutional rights. And, I'll share with you that so many survivors that we have spoken with have talked about the fact that they feel like they're able to take their power back and gain closure just by going through the criminal justice process in a way that is not re-traumatizing. And, when we understand that victims should have those constitutional rights equal to that of the accused, then that is certainly the way to ensure that survivors are able to level the playing field and take their power back. So I encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions about Marcy's Law, and of course we are happy to connect you with Dr. Boydenstall as well. We will now hear from Reverend Vincent James, who is the Chief of Community Building with the city. I've had the pleasure of working with Reverend James as a community advisory board member as part of the Trauma Resilient Community Project. Reverend James.
Thank you, Donna, and thank all of our speakers. I first want to say I am just so honored to be able to share in this time in this space with Survivors Corners and those who have survived some horrific past as relates to violence and as it relates to rape and all the things that have come against you as an individual and us collectively as a human race. I want to say that I am just encouraged by your strength and your boldness and conviction to be able to turn your pain to purpose, to be able to move from surviving to thriving in what you're doing and how you're doing it. Again, my name is Vincent James. I'm a pastor of the Elam Baptist Church, where I've pastored for the past 25 years. And I serve as the Chief of Community Building for Louisville Metro Government, where 6 governmental agencies report to me, one of which that Donna had spoken about, the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, that we're doing a lot of work with the trauma resilient community, the Office of Resilience and Community Services, the Louisville Zoo, Parks and Recreation, as well as Public Health and Wellness. And we also serve with Youth Transition Services. And so with that, I'm glad to be here today to hear your stories, to hear your testimonies, and to hear your heart, because you have faced the pain and you cannot fix it until you're willing to face it. And you faced it, and you are now going back and reaching back and helping others. And I think all of us, to some extent, has had some sort of traumatic experience that has caused us to do the work that we're doing. My experience has been as a result of gun violence. While serving at my church, it was in 2013, that there was a triple homicide right outside my church. And the young people that were murdered in that triple homicide, I knew all of them because they had grown up in the community, number one, and participated in some of the events at church. And through that traumatic experience, it led me down a path to be able to see what could I do to change? How can I take that pain and that trauma and do something positive with it that can transform society? And that led me on a course and a journey from doing volunteer work to doing community work, volunteering to serve on committees and boards, to essentially becoming the Chief of Community Building because of the work that had started as a result of my pain. And so I want to encourage all of you to realize that your pain does have a purpose. and you will walk in your purpose as you continue to work on you. And as you work on you and help others, the greatest and most essential question that we must ask is, what are we doing for others? And you all have answered that by your service to your fellow sisters, to your fellow brothers who have experienced pain as well. Some of the work that we're doing in the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, specifically, the office was founded in 2013, actually as a result of that triple homicide that I mentioned to you, a very traumatic experience that caused me to start my journey. It started as a result of addressing the issue of violence and how to reduce homicides and suicides, and looking at it from a public health lens in terms of how we're able to utilize a public health approach. And we're looking to employ data-driven based solutions to create safe neighborhoods, safe and healthy neighborhoods where everyone can really feel supported. And so Ocean is, again, as we think about how it started and the journey that it started upon, the mayor had convened 82 citizens to serve on a task force to begin to see how we can address this issue of violence in the community. And in 2013, the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods was created as a result of that panel that committee that came together. And so the strategic objectives of Ocean is community building, education, economic development, as well as juvenile justice. And so what we're literally working to do is to try to take an approach from a community perspective and hearing the voice of the community, what they need and what their needs are, that we can begin to provide resources and making those connections for members in our community that have been hurt, that have been traumatized. And I'm so excited to be able to do the work that I do, to wake up every morning to know that I have an opportunity to change someone's life through a policy change or through initiative or a program that we'll be implementing, or through resources that we may provide for our partners in the community. And so in thinking about that, some of the specific programs that Ocean is working on currently, as you heard Donna mention, the Trauma Resilient Community Initiative. Also the Thrive Fellowship, where we are looking and working with young men between the ages of 22 and 26 that have been justice involved, to give them an opportunity for a 2-year civic engagement fellowship to engage them in literally transforming their lives through a lot of case management and wraparound support. We have our One Love in Louisville Ambassador Program. That program is for any citizen who is involved or has a desire to engage in the work of Ocean, that they too can help to reduce violence in their communities, where they truly can be ambassadors and speaking peace and helping others to be able to literally transform their communities. So these ambassadors that we train, we also have a networking night where we have over 452 trained ambassadors in the Louisville community, and we're excited about the work that they're doing. We also have a youth implementation team that utilizes a social justice youth development model to begin to empower youth to utilize their voice. And not only utilize their voice, where we as government hear their voice. This youth implementation team meets quarterly with the mayor, advises him on areas of importance in which they deem themselves. And then they take it up in terms of addressing with the mayor in terms of what types of changes they would like to see. Also, we have the community outreach and mobilization. We have a team of individuals that go out into the community to engage the community, to help empower the community, to provide resources in the community where they may not be familiar with or aware of. And we engage the community members to be a part of this whole community initiative that we feel that it is, because it started in the community. And the office was created because of the community. And it's the community that is going to really make the difference. And so that's what our outreach team, they're focused on and really looking at. And so these are some of the things in terms of my office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods is creating and continues to create. Currently, we are working on a community health plan as a result of what we've seen and what people have experienced as a result of this confluence of pandemic, social protests for social justice, the economic downturn, as well as an increase in violence. You know, our community is hurting. It's been fractured as a result of all of these things colliding together. And so one of the things that we're doing is charting a healing plan for the community. And it's a really exciting opportunity to be able to see our community to be able to get it right and really show America what can happen when the community comes together. So that's some of the things that we're doing in the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. And I have definitely several other agencies that a lot of great work is going forward. But most importantly, I am just truly honored to hear your stories and to hear your experiences and to be able to hear you share them with the passion and the heart that touches my heart. And so whatever I can do to be able to assist or help in any way in my capacity that I currently serve in as a pastor, as the chief of community building, I want you to know that you all have me at your disposal, and I'm glad to be able to share with you on today. So thank you so much again, Donna, for allowing me this time, and I'll answer any questions during this time that we have together.
Thank you so much, Chief James. It's really been a pleasure to work with you throughout this process as well. And I really want to commend your commitment and obvious, very sincere commitment to the well-being of all citizens in our community. As you mentioned, it certainly takes a village. So I would encourage anybody that's on the call that is wanting to provide service to the community to contact us, contact the city, find out a way to plug in to where you can really start to make a difference in other people's lives. We are all here to support and serve each other. And when we begin doing that, that's how we see true sustainable change occur. So at this time, we will open it up for any questions for any of our speakers. We always say at Survivor's Corner, you have the right to ask any question that is on your mind or on your heart, just as our speakers have every right to decline to answer. So keeping with that mantra, please enter your questions in the chat box on Zoom, and our moderator will pitch them out to our speakers. All right, if nobody has any questions at this time, you can feel free to reach us at resilientcommunity@survivorscorner.org. Our moderator will input that into the chat box, so you can copy, paste that into an email if you would like. In closing, I'd just like to share that whether the crime that's been experienced is domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, child abuse, or any other form of violence and exploitation, Survivor's Corner does not believe that the perpetrator's offense should be our shame to carry. And once we begin letting go of the stigma that's associated with victimization, we can begin healing our communities to a more prosperous and safer trajectory forward. My hope is that you will take what you have learned today, and that will inspire you to join us to fight for a stronger, healthier, and safer community. Whether you or someone you love would benefit from our support groups, workshops, or classes, we encourage you to visit us at survivorscorner.org to learn more and to get involved. There are also several volunteer opportunities that we would love to share with you, whether it's directly through Survivor's Corner or any of our phenomenal partner organizations. You can email us once again at resilientcommunity@survivorscorner.org for more information. And as a nonprofit organization, all of our support groups and workshops are free. We do rely on the generosity of our community to support us in providing these critical services. If you feel called to support our mission in a monetary way, you can donate on our website at survivorscorner.org. All amounts are considered generous and are tax deductible. Thank you again for joining us today, and may your weekend be filled with love, blessings, and peace. Thank you.
Would you like to have a question?
It looks like we have a question.
So Tracy says would like to know, well, first of all, she'd like to thank us all for sharing, and she wants to know what are the most effective ways that we found to drum up support for the passing laws and community issues.
That's a really great question. I'll take it if that's okay with the panel. Okay. So the most effective ways that we have found is really partnerships with other organizations. It truly takes a village approach to achieve change. We empower survivors to be able to use their experience to convey to legislators the ways that we can reform our legislation so that it is more protective. And it does require harsher penalties for certain forms of abuse and exploitation. And we do so in a way that makes it less re-traumatizing for a survivor to take a lifetime's worth of experience and document that into a 3-minute testimony. That process in and of itself can be very challenging. So we provide that support, and then we partner with other organizations such as law firms to help inform us about what the legislation specifically should look like. And then of course we contact our legislators. We have a good relationship with public servants who have seen our work and have helped us to move other initiatives forward. So as far as the effectiveness goes, I would say it's open lines of communication, following through when you make a commitment to move something forward, and also being kind to yourself and giving yourself space and grace to say, are you the right person to champion this initiative right now? Or are you in a space where you can be healthier in a supportive role? And we, of course, can help provide that structure in determining what the best path forward for actively working on legislation. Any other questions? All right, now for real, we will call it a day. And again, thank you all so much for joining us and for all that you do to support our community.